where is that Tesla Roadster? I've seen so many people comment Tesla is a scam, they're a BS company because they promised us 0 to 60 in 1.9 second Roadsters, and they're not here yet. Even though they originally said at the event when they unveiled it, 2020, okay? They did not say early 2020, they did not say mid 2020, they didn't even say late 2020. So basically what that means is, even if the first Roadster that gets delivered to a customer happens at December 31st, 11:59 p.m., then it was technically not late, okay? Not sure who's going around spreading the idea that the 2020 Roadster is supposed to come out in 2019, but yeah, a lot of people are still complaining that, where is it? Tesla's obviously scamming us if they're not a year early with their product unveilings, but yeah, don't get me wrong, I completely agree. It's totally plausible that the Roadster may not get delivered next year, but in today's video, I thought I could break down as to why I think there's a good chance of it being delivered in probably, those last couple weeks of 2020, but even if they are late to the game, this thing should still be quite a game changer. So first thing to be aware of is Franz has said some very promising things about the Roadster somewhat recently, in that the production model is on slate to exceed some of the original specifications promised at this event. Now, I wouldn't get too caught up on the 0 to 60 speed though, because Elon corrected some people back on Twitter saying that the original base Roadster will actually not be getting 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. The base cheapest Roadster you can afford will only get you a mere 2.1 0 to 60 time. I know, so incredibly slow, but if you want to get that 1.9 seconds, it probably has more to do with how the vehicle is able to propel itself across the street, because once you get into the sub 2 second category, I think it has a lot more to do with grip the tires have on the track than it actually does with the sheer amount of torque and acceleration the motors can provide, which is why Elon has said that there will be a SpaceX package of the Roadster that's going to replace the 2 back seats of the car, which honestly, who was really going to use those? Those looked incredibly uncomfortable, but there would be giant compressed air tanks in those back seats that would allow the car to literally shoot itself further ahead to kind of break that traction limitation that the tires are going to have on the road, and that's how you're going to get the sub 2 second 0 to 60 time, unless there's some other grip breakthrough that Franz has not talked about yet. So when he says that the production version of the Roadster is probably going to beat the specifications of the original prototype, I would say that probably has more to do with the overall top speed and the range than necessarily just the 0 to 60 time, but of course these are the specifications that are likely going to end up holding up production of the Roadster or delaying the Roadster, which, by the way, we did a Twitter poll asking people when they think the Roadster will actually start delivering, and it seemed pretty split. The majority of people were voting on the start of 2021, so one of those options was even later than the beginning of 2021, but most people still felt pretty confident that, yeah, the Roadster may not deliver in 2020, but it'll probably just be a couple months after the start of 2021. But there were also a fair amount of people that did think it was coming in 2020, and that's personally where I would vote because of a couple reasons. I know that we have this stigma of Elon time because Tesla is notorious for not hitting their delivery times. I get that, but there's several reasons I think the Roadster is not quite the same as, say, the Model 3 or even the Tesla semi-truck, which has been delayed. For one, the semi-truck, while I think the promised specifications of that vehicle are likely going to be delivered on, the reason they're holding off on mass production is because so many companies want to preserve those things, and they take an insane amount of batteries. That's going to throw off the entire production line for both the Model 3 and the Model Y if every single one of those semis has to have a 500 kilowatt hour, to some even suggested a 1 megawatt hour battery pack. That's going to slow down production across the board, and it's likely why they're waiting to release the semi. They want to wait to a point when they can actually produce enough batteries to meet demand. The Roadster, I don't think, is necessarily going to have this problem because this is clearly going to be a fairly low volume vehicle. There's only going to be 1,000 founder series of the Tesla Roadster, and in order to reserve this thing, you have to put down sometimes north of $50,000 just for a reservation. That's not for the whole car. Then later down the road, you're going to have to put, several $100,000 into this vehicle once it's actually starting production and they're ready to deliver it to you. So in my mind, that means that even though this Roadster will be going into production around this time next year, they don't have to make too many of them. Even though with its over 600 mile range and likely a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack, I don't think that's going to hold up battery production for the rest of the Tesla lineup because, again, not that many people are going to be able to reserve or order this car. Hundreds of Tesla semis have been reserved by giant commercial corporations, but those giant commercial corporations don't necessarily need Roadsters in the same way. This is not a business expense. This is not something most companies are going to need for their business unless, of course, you're a famous YouTuber, in which case you're gonna make lots of videos with this thing, but famous YouTubers are not, that big of a market. So my personal prediction, I could totally end up being wrong on this, is that by the end of 2020, some of the first Founders Edition series of the Roadsters will actually be delivered, and that's because they don't have to make that many of them. So when we're talking about production ramping with the Model 3 and the Model Y, at things like the Gigafactory, it's always like, yeah, we want to get up to 3,000 vehicles per week. Whereas this thing, they're only going to make 1,000 Founders series, which means they don't have to change a lot of their assembly lines. They don't have to lose a lot of people to just commit to the Roadster, even though I know those gaps appear to be much thinner on this prototype than any panel gaps you'll see on any Model 3 or Model Y. So I'm sure producing the individual basis will be much more complicated and intricate than, a typical sedan. But the fact that it's not going to put a huge holdup on the battery assembly process and they don't have to produce that many of them makes me think that no, not every person who reserved a Founder series is going to get one at the end of 2020, but you're going to start seeing the first consumer deliveries by the end of next year. Knowing how Tesla planned out the rollout of the Model Y, my hope is that they're aware, kinda, of this stigma behind Elon time on things being delayed, so that when they actually announce things, they're trying to anticipate that, yeah, maybe this is going to take longer than we think, so we shouldn't be as ambitious with our timelines. And given the Roadster was unveiled way back in 2017, and they promised 2020, they gave themselves a 3-year gap to basically iron out all of the kinks with the Roadster, make sure it's working by the time they're ready to deliver. And because of this vehicle being so low volume and so high price, meaning that it's a very small demographic that actually needs these things, that's what makes me think they'll have no trouble reaching their deadline, or at least being fairly close. I won't be completely flabbergasted and shocked if they end up not being able to deliver by the end of next year, but probably soon after. When do you guys think the Tesla Roadster is coming? And do you think there's some serious design holdups behind the scenes that are going to end up delaying this thing even further? Feel free to let me know. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope you have an excellent day. Take care.